Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. Today we've got a little bit of a different session than you would normally see. Our good friend and partner Brian Gordon here is working on a group long-term care case with us, and we're at the point in the sales process where we've got all our proposals back from the carrier. We've done our census analysis. We've got a good idea of the lay of the land of the group, and now it's really just kind of going through the proposals, analyzing them, going back to what we've done on the census analysis and helping him pick through a finalist or two so that we can take this to the group and be able to propose something that they'll hopefully move forward with. So, Brian, thank you for being gracious and allowing us to make this a learning experience for everyone. And of course, just your partnership, bringing the group to us. Do you want to give as much or as little background as you feel comfortable giving on this group so we can kind of set the stage for diving in?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, it's a company I've known for a long time. They're more financial services in the accounting space, financial planners, but more probably heavier in the accounting space. And they are starting to bring in younger employees and bringing in people that I've been talking to over the last few years that obviously are what we do is become very important to them, and they're kind of and I've tried to get in with the company before. I've done work with them. They refer me clients all the time and things like that, but had a tremendous amount of pushback from the partners and the company. And it was just something that they didn't even want to offer as a voluntary, let alone forget about doing anything or going to pay anything, which I get it. But this, I told them, I said, you got to start doing this. I said, these younger people are dealing with it. Your admin staff that are 45 to 65 years old, I'm talking to them about their families, what they're going through. They don't know where to go to. So he's like, well, whatever you need me to do, he's like, I will go ahead, shop the market for us, come back, and basically just tell us what to do and what you need us to do and how long it's going to take and what kind of access you need. So he kind of just said, whatever you want to do, whatever you need to do, we'll let you deal with. I'll be behind it. But even though they don't, particularly the partners in the firm, they make so much money that this is just basically a pimple for them, another thing to deal with that they just don't want to address for anything. But I said it was smart because they'll learn about resources and really what long-term care planning is and how it eventually just affects all of us no matter what, because it does. We all know that, but we also live, eat, drink, and sleep this stuff. So and that's kind of really how I got to where I am right now. I probably talked to him about it 5, 6 years ago and probably 2, 3 years ago. And now I brought it up at my last meeting with him. And I said, you have no choice. You need to do this. I go, it's what people are doing now. And I said, you need to show your clients what's going on because next we're going to start going after clients of theirs because they deal with a lot of business owners.
Yeah,
So
so you've had a relationship with them with regard to individual business, but I also think you could probably knock on the wall of your office and somebody would hear you in their office that you're so close proximity wise, correct?
100%. Yes, they are literally that close to me. So I've known the company for probably 40 years of my life, and I've been working for 35 of them. I know the people very well there. I've had people that have bought individual policies from me and collected a tremendous amount of money over the years. And again, these are people that were high income earners. But I'll tell you what, when it came to their family needing to pay for care, this was like a godsend for them because I don't know if the kids would have made, I know the kids would not have made the same decisions.
Sure.
So,
So, I mean,
yeah,
for everyone on the call, that's a testament to number one, there could be a group opportunity just next door to you. It could come from other relationships where you've really helped somebody solve a long-term care need. And this can, with enough polite persistence, turn into group opportunities. This can help kind of expand your business. So, for those of you who are interested in group long-term care but feel as if you're a little short on opportunities, it kind of goes back to what Diane said on her study group session a couple of weeks ago. Return back to your all-stars, right? Your referrers or people you've done a really good job for, and they could be a source of new opportunities for you. So thank you for helping us set the stage a little bit, Brian. I know this group is located in your state, and why don't we just take a look at what we have for demographics for this case? So,
And the one thing I would just want to say, Jason, too, is that when I first got them to go along with this, I told them it's going to take me a good month to get back to you because the companies are moving very, very, very slow. And I've communicated with Jason and Mark throughout the process, and they've kept me in the loop. And every time they do, I shoot her a quick email, said we're on it. We came back with four of them. I said I was happy if we got two opportunities. And so now it's creating more conversation and more analysis. So give me, till early next week to get everything to you.
yep.
So that's
And
kind of
that's
set
a
the
big piece of it.
expectations. It's all about expectations, and she doesn't care, and she, copies my buddy there, and that I became friends with, and then everything's good.
Yeah, great. So, I would say everything done right to start. Why don't we just look through a little bit of the group demographics and Mark, feel free to chime in if there was anything about the data that stuck out to you. But one of the big learning experiences that I think we can take from this case is that there's some W-2 employees and there's some 1099 employees, right? So I think one of the things we notice between the proposals is, are we on the proposal getting a 319 employee proposal, or are we having some of these folks actually taken out of the proposal? Because one of the things that I made sure to mention to each of the carriers when I sent this over is you'll see it marked on the census. There are a number of employees here that are 1099. And I think a lot of those were maybe tax preparers or individual financial planners. Mark, do you have something to add?
I would say that as long as you're within like 10 to 20%, the carrier is not going to really hold your feet to the fire on who's on the census. So don't overly concern yourself with it, is what I would say. But do focus on the people you think are most likely to participate and see if
Yep.
you can kind of estimate from this what the participation level is going to be.
Yep. So there's a couple of things that stick out to me, and I'm sure if you're looking at the spreadsheet, probably stick out to you. But a couple of places my eye always goes is number one, let's get an idea of the age ranges, how this employer segments out by age, because one of the things you'll really have to look out for is certain carriers have um, age ranges that they're willing to go up to on their long-term care rider. So important ones to know are Transamerica. They're going to cut off the long-term care rider at age 65. They can do a chronic condition rider that would go up to age 75. We don't have that option in this state that we're working with this group. So we do actually have a hard cutoff of age 65 with Transamerica. Allstate is going to cut off the long-term care rider access at age 70. And for Chubb, ages 71 to 80, they're still going to have some long-term care access, but their benefit will be capped at $50,000 of face amount. And they're always going to be simplified issue underwriting. Trustmark, I believe, depending on whether it's ULE or TLC, they're going to have some cutoffs too. I believe off the top of my head, it is 75. So they're a bit more favorable there, I would say, but depending on product and case by case. So looking at the
Yeah,
demographics
one
here,
other thing I'll mention though, like the more practical thing too, is that when you get above age 70, the prices get very, very, very expensive.
correct.
So you're
Yeah.
not going to get a lot of buyers in that range
Yeah.
regardless.
And even certain carriers over age 60, you see a dramatic kind of age band in the issue age pricing. So definitely a good point. So I one of the first things that I did in talking with Brian is see how many do we have 65 or older? And it looks like about 10% of the group is 65 or older. So that's something we'll have to look for as far as we we'll obviously go with the greatest good for the whole group, but we have to think about these people still, right? They are in a long-term care age or thinking about long-term care age. And thankfully, Brian is a very experienced long-term care specialist on the individual side as well. So we feel a bit more peace of mind that Brian would be able to individually consult with any of these employees should they not be included in the offer or should the offer not provide them as much value as they like, right? So it's something to always think about. You want to make sure, when you're presenting to the group that you bring this up. You show that you've done your due diligence, right? I've looked at all the carriers. Here's where some of the cutoff points are. I noticed that we have about 30 employees who are in this sort of section. We can do things to get them taken care of individually if an offer precludes them from any sort of long-term care because of age. But I just wanted to let you know that we've kind of taken a look at all those nooks and crannies, right? But we do skew quite young as well. So we do have a number of young professionals here. So it looks like about 44% are between the ages of 25 and 40. So that's an opportunity for people to get their foot in the door of long-term care planning with affordable coverage. Um, that may be appealing to them based on the affordability. And then just looking at income. So it looks like we have a pretty high earning group here, about 61% of the group making over 125,000 a year, which again, carriers don't require income to be on the census, but this shows us, hey, we have a group here that does have some buying power, right? They have the opportunity to, if it fits the budget, if it seems like a fit for them, purchase up into higher levels of coverage, which the carrier always likes to see. Obviously, participation is number one on their mind, but they also want to see that people who find this to be a fit and have the capacity buy up into higher levels of coverage. So that's something that I look at quite a bit, and an additional 10% that are making over 100,000. So average income of about $162,000 a year. So I would say a pretty high income group as far as I'm concerned. So these are some of the just soft things I look at, including gender blend, right? We have um, 59% male, 41% female, but there is good female representation within this office, which is kind of a positive double whammy, right? Like carriers actually like female dominated groups or groups with a high concentration of females, but also females tend to benefit from this coverage quite a bit, not only from unisex pricing compared to the individual market being, a very favorable pricing outlook for them, but because long-term care, as Wendy would say, she wouldn't let me get away without saying it, is a women's issue a lot of the time. So it's something where we'll be able to speak to that, educate to that, and it'll be a good audience for it. So even though it's a male-dominated office, there's quite good female representation in here, which is something to like as well. And then we also separate out by state. So it looks like we do have a number of remote workers, but we are dominated by in-office Illinois workers, about 83% of the office. So no real reason to cite us out of state. Illinois is a perfectly good state for plan design for all the carriers we work with. So this is just kind of your lay of the land of the group. Any other observations you have, Mark, or any questions that people have? Feel free to drop any questions in the chat if you have them.
Jason, did you talk about the situs state yet?
Yeah, I just did.
Okay,
So we have a
sorry. I
number
thought
of
you might
remote
have. Okay.
workers, but we have
Yep.
good plan designs in Illinois for all our carriers. So
Yeah. Thank you.
The other thing I would say about the importance of the census is, and Jason touched on it, is it can help with the messaging too. So as we're going through the education and enrollment process, understanding who the audience is and who we need to speak to is super helpful. So that goes with the the state they're in, the age group, the income range, gender. Yeah, it's all relevant. So,
So, Brian, I know we went through a lot of these high level things when we actually got together and talked about this case yesterday, but I'll let you kind of steer the ship as to where we go next. Do you want to run through the proposals that we got back from the carrier, or would you like to have more of an employer funding conversation? Because I know you're planning on broaching the employer funding subject, and
Right.
you may be met with a little resistance. So I'll let you kind of decide where we go next.
Yeah, no, I'll for sure be met with resistance. There's no question about it. But I want to just have the discussion. My thought process was go to some of the little bit lower income earning folks that we deal with over there that I hear from and see some of them as well from time to time, and see if they would maybe just provide a small benefit. I know Jason and I talked about the cost would be pretty minimal per employee each month, and just a little bit of a goodwill of some sort to say, hey, we're going to do something for you, and not do it for the partners and do it for all the other employees in the company. The two kind of issues that we had, I think, looking at it was, Jason, was, the few people that are over the age, which I know we can do we're going to look obviously to do traditional if we need to with them, or look at a hybrid of some sort, and, whatever they can qualify for, basically, we'll present
Yep.
to them. Go that direction. Then the other side of our equation is, having the offering to the 1099ers and the people that are, would normally not have access to some benefits. I feel like that was another important part to me when we talked.
Yeah.
The funding of it, I think is just going to be a pretty fast conversation, and it's probably going to go no, and I'm going to walk away and say, all right, well, we're going to go at this thing tough, and we're going to kind of, have a good game plan, and people know what we do, and they know that they have used us for their clients and themselves. So I at least have that going for us.
Yeah. So I think we can talk a little bit through the employer funding side, and then we can look a little bit at what it may uh, look like for a certain group of folks to be able to get some level of coverage. And
Mhm.
um, Mark, would you? I know you may be in two minds right now, but for some reason I'm not able to sort on the Excel spreadsheet. I think I'm like
mm,
in between Excel subscriptions. Would you mind sharing and just kind of going through a little bit of an employer funded breakdown so we can start to just maybe get a plan of attack to see what would make sense from keeping things really affordable, but being able to maybe take care of the people who need it most. So I'm Brian, you were talking about maybe the lower income people, just starting them off with a base plan, but we can cut it up a million different ways. We can do it by tenure, we can do it by job title.
Jason, shoot me the password in the chat,
Yeah, gotcha.
and I'll share.
I don't have like a right or wrong way. I just thought if I could take a little
Yeah.
bite of the apple, get something out there, and let them take a look at it. If I can even get that out of it, would be terrific. I'm
And
not
there's really no
optimistic.
right or wrong way to kind of, I guess, recommend this. I would just say, um, if you're open to, if you're able to generate some ideas for him and get him an idea of how affordably this could be done while allowing him to come up with his own ideas that you may be able to run with. Hey, like, I actually don't mind the price tag that I see here, but how about we do it for this class of employees? You know, that might be a good possibility here.
Right. Okay.
So I know we're doing three carriers on the summary. But this is kind of our more all-inclusive pricing that we're looking at as the wizard starts to take over here.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll sort this guy.
Yeah, I just think,
We can sort it different ways. So I'll start with the salary breakdown. And we also have the job title here as well.
yep.
So if we do
I
salary
think
first,
these were just people labeled partners.
okay, so we can do partners then. So we'll label partners. And the totals are at the top here. So the total monthly premium for the entire group for each level of coverage. Think of this as like the minimum level, and think of this as kind of like a little bit higher, but still an affordable premium for each of the carriers. We try to recommend at least $1,000 a month of long-term care benefit, though, when we can. When it's employer funded, that's the most important thing.
Yep.
Now, if we do the partner level, you'll see these numbers changed because it's only going to add up the totals for those partners that we filtered on. So again, our goal here is to get something affordable that's getting the benefit to the right class of people. And, again, Brian, you can kind of tell us how you thought and presented, the employer funded amount. But I think this gives you a couple of options that are palatable given that this is the cost for the entire group for the month. And this is a pretty large employer, so they probably pay a lot more for their health insurance and other benefits. And this is more of a rounding error for them in terms of what they pay. But what are your thoughts, Brian?
Their technology bill alone is stomach ache when I look at it. I talk to them about that. So yeah, I would think that this is a rounding error is correct. Um, I still think that I think from a retention and an employee appreciation side of it, I feel like the lower income employees are still the way that I might want to address this with him because I don't know if that premium per person ends up being a little bit lower for him. I don't know. That's my thought because some of the partners I know have policies already and we're not getting rid of those and there's no reason to change them and things like that. And some of them have policies with the NML. They should have been changed 5 or 6 years ago, but they're still crying about it today. Every so often, I hear from them that they wish they would have made some changes. So that part, I just don't think they care, and they make so much money. Some of these guys that it's just not even they're not so worried about it.
Hmm.
So
So
I
you're
don't know.
thinking
I
a
just
foot in the door for those who might have more of an uphill battle on the individual market.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, and I have a few people through there that I know they're dealing with their parents right now, and they know what it's costing them for non-licensed marginal caregivers, and it scares them to death thinking of what's going to happen to them down the road because it's only getting worse. So,
Yeah. I think
So,
that the key to all of it, though, is like Brian saying, find the group that's going to value this the most,
right.
find a price point that they are willing to pay for. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much that is, it's going to drive your success immensely, especially on the voluntary component of this. I can't stress that enough. We see so many groups that kind of bail out doing a little bit of funding, and all of a sudden they have like 1/3 of the participation that they would have had they just done something. Don't let them kind of have that out because even with a group this size, of course, you can do all voluntary, but they're not going to have good results. And it's important for HR to know that up front.
and it's not always about, arm wrestling the decision maker, right? I think if you can, as we're kind of trying to go through here, get to a stupid easy number for funding and to be able to explain the impact that that will have for the employees that are funded and the impact that it'll have on the enrollment, right? At the end of the day, you still want to be labeled an employer of choice. You still want to be able to put out benefits that get engagement and get participation. But if that can be done with, something that is negligible compared to their other expenses, while again explaining that impact, I think you're going to have uh, kind of an easier time. So why don't we look at maybe some of those lower income folks and Brian, this may be throwing a dart at a dartboard of a income amount. But what do you think from your perspective would be a good place to start, knowing that we could look at really any cross section?
Right. I mean, I personally feel like it's the under $100,000. I think it's the, you know,
Okay,
45 to $80,000 employee, but I figured let's just see what that number looked like.
Yeah.
sure.
It
And
could
we
just
can
be
and we can do a special filter here. So we'll do less than, and I think you were saying 80,000 or
A
less, right?
hundred.
100,000. Okay.
let's start at 100 just to see how many that gives us in this case.
Okay. I'll just do less than 100,000.
Yeah.
And that will be 91 of the 319.
It's not like,
True.
that's like you said, it's a rounding error for a company like this typically. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts? And I know everyone here has dealt with it and seen it and, have opinions on it. So I think that's kind of the idea of what, am I going about this? Are we going about this the
Yeah.
right way type
Well,
of
I
thing?
think your context about the fact that most of the partners already own a plan, and that's not the goal of what you're trying to do here. That would have been so. My initial instinct was, why aren't we doing something for the people that are the partners and the high earners here? But because of that context, all of a sudden the whole idea shifted in my head. We know we need to get something that's a starter plan for all the rest of the employees that don't have those plans.
Or
So
don't have the
that's
capacity.
Or,
Yeah, it's the
or,
opposite of how we would normally think about it, to Mark's point. But I think it's really creative, and I think it's, based on your relationship with the group and what you've already done with certain employees. But it just gives us that cool reminder that we can do this any way we like, right?
and I just look at too some of my past experiences. Like I've done non-for-profits where they don't make a lot of money at all, and their executive directors don't even meet, the $200,000 category on that. But they went ahead and they bought a plan for everybody. The buy-up on it was incredible with, what we were able to do with like MetLife back in the day. They weren't so smart, but we took advantage of that. And so we still have that group. There are only 4 people left at the group right now out of 35 originally. And now it's up to about 70 employees. So we're going to go back and talk to them about this. So that's kind of where I look at it because they looked at what their accessibility to this benefit was even 20, 15 years ago when we did this. And that was the reason that they were willing to do something like this is because most of the people weren't going to be able to go buy it.
yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at pretty affordable rates here for a
Yeah.
group of, over 90 people that we've carved out. But, I do see a couple folks who are going to be, there's at least one above age 75. It looks like there may be a couple part-timers in here, kind of given the
Sure.
income, maybe some younger interns, whatever it may
So
be.
maybe we pull out if we pull out some of
But
the people with their help and figure it out. But yeah, that's an
even
idea.
that number, uh, that's up there will look palatable, but there's going to be a few folks that probably won't meet the criteria, so that number will actually be, in reality, a
Even a
bit
little
lower.
lower. Right.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at what you guys as you guys are talking here. I
Okay.
think so this is the number of people that won't be able to get the LTC easily. But again, we can, oops, I did the wrong one. Sorry. Greater than, less than.
I'm glad you're doing
Sorry.
this, not me. So much
Oh,
Well,
me
better.
too.
actually,
You
you
have no
said that, but
idea.
I wanted to say something kind of related to that. It's okay to kind of like get used to the spreadsheet and practice it. The reason I say that is if you can share this with your key decision maker on the employer side, you can actually have a working session where they can help you determine what the best fit is. You don't have to make this decision on your own. Use a consultative approach to it. Let them kind of help you slice and dice and try to because it's really their plan, right? And giving them these calculators empowers them to really make this plan their own. So don't shy away from it. We're happy to jump on, like Brian, we talk, we have a lot of conversations where we can jump on with your clients and help out, being your technical wizard here if you need it. But don't shy away from showing the client even the spreadsheet here so that they can see see how they can design this themselves.
Yep. So I would say if we go down this road, it is likely to be with one of these three carriers, just given that there's a little bit of headache doing the employer funding with Trustmark, given the salary gross up and things of that nature. But you can see, um, Transamerica comes in a bit cheaper because there are more people precluded from the long-term care rider in this case because of age, but would probably come in somewhere in the neighborhood of Chubb if we had those extra folks included. Allstate a bit more pricey, but you're getting a couple of different things. You're getting 6% acceleration. You're getting, a fully guaranteed whole life product. So there are some product and pricing differences to go through here. But overall, under 2000 a month to get, the base plan for each of these carriers. And if we do something a little bit more robust. We're looking at just under 4,100 for all with Chubb and Transamerica coming in significantly more cost effective.
Hey, Brian, maybe I'm missing something. Hey, it's Wendy. Um, do you have this broken down how long they're employed? Have you done that? Looking at some of them have been there for 2 years, some of them have been there for 25 years.
I don't know. I don't know if that was on the information I asked her for.
I was just
I
curious
don't
I don't
remember.
think we actually
I
had
don't think
years of
we asked.
service.
I don't think we
Yeah, I have
asked.
no
I
idea.
can.
because we work with some companies, associations, but companies that have segmented it out on giving a bigger benefit or a
Good
benefit
idea.
for sure
Yeah,
for those that
great
have been
idea.
there longer.
That's something you can suggest,
Yeah,
Brian, in talking with them too. Like, I'm sure there are higher tenured employees who still are within this income range as well. So that's kind of a double whammy. Yeah, I think Wendy's referring to a case that came up just recently where we were proposed an idea of, what about funding at different benefit levels for, higher years of service versus lower years of service, a base plan for people who have been in at least 1 year, and for people who are five and above, a bit more of a robust benefit. So
that's a
there's
great
all
idea.
sorts of ways to do
I
this.
jotted that down. That's a great idea. So,
So it's just about kind of keeping an open mind, coming in with some suggestions from your perspective, but letting them understand, this is your plan, you see how inexpensively we can do it for this large group of employees that we're showing here, right?
right,
So there are inexpensive options no matter what way we slice it.
right. And I know like all companies have trouble sometimes retaining certain levels of employees or, you know, capturing. I don't know if this would be something that's going to pull people in, but it's going to certainly be like, oh, this is another benefit I received from the company. And guess what? I probably won't get this down the road, and it pays me, 3, 4 thousand a month in cash. If I get sick and need care, and that there's a high likelihood I might.
And
So,
and for those
yeah,
folks who are lower income, the premium is not so prohibitive that if they separated from their employer, they wouldn't be able to financially take this over if they understood the value too, which I
for
think is
sure.
important.
Yep, I agree.
So Mark, anything else you kind of want to discuss as far as this piece of it before we go through proposals that we have?
No, I think that's a good segue.
Okay, awesome. So I'll share my screen and we'll go over. Let's do Chubb, Allstate, Transamerica, and if we have time, we'll go Trustmark, just knowing that we're kind of angling for an employer-funded case here. But let's see what we have got. I have blanked out what we've got for names, but as you can see, they're including all 319 employees on this proposal. Um, and I'll get down to the underwriting offer itself. Da, da, da. So we had 30 hours per week put on the proposal, but this is something that we can always go back to the carrier and say, hey, for other benefits, we're sitting at X hours a week to be benefit eligible. Generally, the carrier will allow us to match that. I don't think I've seen a situation where they've taken a super hard stance on this. At the end of the day, the carrier kind of wants to fit into their overall benefits package. Um, but looking at what we have for an underwriting offer from Chubb, we have for those age 19 through 70 employees, we have a guaranteed issue amount of 100,000 face amount. So with extension, that means $200,000 of long-term care. Conditional guaranteed issue is going to run you two health questions, 150,000. So it's nice to have a little bit extra that people can buy up to with still extremely limited underwriting and still access 150K death benefit, 300,000 of long-term care. And then simplified issue for those ages 19 through 70 is going to be $225,000, which means 450,000 total for long-term care with that extension. The restoration of the death benefit is going to allow us to restore up to 50%, up to a max of $50,000 of death benefit. So I would say, as far as the restoration goes, we're looking a little less competitive than, say, a Transamerica or an Allstate in this case. But it's still good to have some restoration. And as I alluded to, for those 71 through 80, those employees, $50,000 face amount, there's still long-term care involved with it. You're still able to get kind of your extension restoration going, but it is a capped benefit. But this may be an advantage if we're looking to fund some employees who are in that age range. So it's something to think about. And for spouses, we actually have CGI available. So there's no GI for spouses here. You'll see it for Transamerica and Allstate, but still a pretty easy road for spouses to be able to access 75,000 with extension, with restoration, which is really, really nice. And then for the SI, you see 112,500 here. And that's due to Chubb's kind of plan mechanics. So you can purchase as a spouse up to 50% of what your employee partner purchases in this case. So you can see the simplified issue max is 225. That means the spouse is eligible for a maximum of 112.5 and 75 because we have the CGI max of 150K here. So,
I have a really dumb question to ask at
yeah,
this point, but I've been meaning to ask that question. But let's say the employee does the 225 max and the spouse does the 112.5 and they both get it. Let's say that he decides to bring his down to $150,000. Are they going to go back to her policy and reduce her down to that half of what he currently has? Like people
that's
ask
not a dumb
questions
question because I don't think we've actually ever been encountered with that situation, but it's a really, really good question to ask.
kind of like the
Um,
spousal discount question, buy the policy for a year and then people want to know if they can drop it. With some companies it works and some it doesn't.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that's a really good question given the
okay.
contingency mark. I don't know if you've ever been faced with that before, but I've never been faced with that question before. If we have an employee partner reduce benefits and the spouse has bought up to their maximum allowable amount of 50% of their partner's purchase, do you know if they're going to scale back the spouse or not? Super good question.
I don't think they're going to track it closely enough to do it, but I wouldn't
Yeah,
use it as a strategy.
Yeah, yeah,
so
that's as good an answer as I could give at this point too.
I
I
work with
think they
some
probably wouldn't track it closely enough.
I work with
But
some creative people in business and they ask a lot of questions and I've had a lot of crazy stuff asked of me. And if I'm thinking it, someone I'm showing it to is probably going to think of it. So,
yeah, I would agree. That's a good way to
okay,
think about it. And
fair
I'll
enough.
get that question answered for you because I'm curious myself.
Cool. Sounds
Um,
good.
so I think what we're going to do is just kind of go through the offers, the age ranges, and the benefit amounts here because we've we're kind of hurting on time just a little bit. So I want to get through these. And Brian, we've gone through these proposals extensively ourselves. So looking at Allstate now, again, this is a guaranteed, fully guaranteed whole life, 319 eligible lives. They're counting everybody on the census as well. And let's look at what we have for our benefits. So GI for Allstate is going to be similar to Chubb, ages 18 to 70. Also, right in line with Chubb, 100,000 GI. There's no CGI with Allstate, so we're looking at a simplified issue max of 250,000. So a little bit above what Chubb will offer, but with the caveat of these folks who are 71 to 80, there's going to be no long-term care rider as part of this coverage. Okay, so eligible employees ages 18 to 70 can buy up to 250K with long-term care, with extension, with restoration, given simplified issue underwriting. But employees 71 to 80, they'll have simplified issue. They won't have the opportunity to purchase any long-term care here. So it's just something we need to keep in mind. But what we do see, which is nice, is guaranteed issue for spouses. So if we have a working spouse, they actually get 30K GI, and a non-working spouse gets 10K GI, which is definitely a nice to have, right? To give spouses a safety net, even if it's a small level of coverage. is nice to be able to say you can offer. And pretty nice simplified issue maximums for spouses as well. I think this is outside of Trustmark ULE, the most favorable benefit amount given to spouses through simplified issue underwriting in this case. 150,000, which is 300,000 a long-term care, is definitely nothing to sneeze at and is very competitive. Same for a non-working spouse or just unknown, same deal. So I would say we still have the issue of folks over 70 needing a long-term care um, avenue if it's something that they don't already own and are looking to pursue. So that's where Brian, we may put our heads together on individual solutions for those people on a case-by-case basis. But I would say overall, a pretty competitive offer. It's just about does the pricing make sense, and things of that nature. But I think given the size of this group, one of the things we talked about, and Mark, I don't know if you agree, but we were talking about Chubb and Trustmark versus Allstate and Transamerica. And I would say, given the size segment that Chubb and Trustmark normally target, we're bound to get a little bit better attention from Allstate, from Transamerica versus a Chubb or Trustmark, even though they all sign us an implementation manager who will be doing their due diligence on our case. What are your thoughts on that kind of spin on things?
Well, I would say that if you have the employer funding, you're going to get more attention because the carriers know, like we do, that you're going to have a
Right.
much better case and you're going to have more participation, more premium. But I do agree they Allstate and Transamerica have a small market segment that they have like a specific approach to, and this being kind of large, on the large side of that or above that type of segment, yeah, I think you'll get a little bit more attention there. I do think that they all compete with each other, and you see kind of similar GI limits and things
Right.
like that across the board. And you can always kind of say, "Hey, I'm getting this from this carrier. Will you match it?" And they'll usually be pretty flexible if they think the risk is not bad for
Yeah, and this is why I
carriers.
thought this was such a good learning experience because there are so many nooks and crannies in these proposals. Like you'll notice, no GI for spouses on Chubb, but we get that 71 to 80 segment taken care of. Here we don't get the 71 to 80 segment taken care of as well, but we get spouse GI, we get a little bit higher SI, and definitely higher SI for spouses. So there's a bunch of ins and outs to this, and just to look over Transamerica's as well. Just to kind of understand the full range of what we're dealing with, we have yet again 100,000 GI amount, and pretty much every carrier we could propose this with is probably going to stick with 100,000 employee GI. If we have employer funding, that's something we can potentially campaign for a higher GI amount. But what I don't normally see on Transamerica proposals all that much is we actually have 125,000 of CGI. So, if you can answer a couple of underwriting questions, you can purchase an additional 25,000. But where Transamerica's niche truly is that 500,000 simplified issue. It's something to think about given that we are with a high income group, but also knowing that, to be more competitive than some of the other carriers, we'd have to have people that are interested in buying up above, 250,000, which is what Allstate's offering here. So those cases may be few and far between. You may have some takers. It's all about kind of knowing your audience there. And then we do have GI for spouses. This is quite small. Let me see if I can blow this up. But very much in line with Allstate, 30,000 GI for a spouse who's actively working, 15,000 for a non-working spouse. And we even get a little CGI for the spouses, which is nice, especially for non-actively working spouses. If they can get through a couple health questions, they'll get $25,000 max, and SI up to 100,000. So, Mark, Brian and I are kind of already had this conversation, and I gave him like in my heart of hearts, if this was like my mother or father's business and I was writing this, like what I would have as finalist one or finalist two. but I'm interested to kind of hear your perspective, given that we've gone through these three.
The funny thing about all of this is, we're doing this analysis. When you get to the client level, they're just going to want your recommendation, and you're going to want to recommend something that you have confidence in, even beyond the proposal, but also the process, and which carrier you feel like is going to deliver, the best experience with given the strategy that you're going down. So I don't think you can go wrong with the three carriers, but you'll probably have a preference based on your working with those carriers and having just a better feeling about the people you're working with. I know it sounds kind of a little uh hand wavy, in terms of the answer. But I really do think that, if they're all in the same range and you're competitive to each other, pick the one that you think is going to deliver the best experience. Bottom line. So Jason, I'll throw that question back at you. What would you choose based on that answer?
Well, in my opinion, I think we probably, it's really hard because each carrier offers something that is really, really good for this group. But I would say my heart says Allstate, as long as we can get to an employer-funded amount that is palatable to the employer. If they plan to, after a conversation, do some level of employer funding, it's honestly going to be hard to show Allstate next to the other two and get them to say, I'm willing to spend 15, 20% more for Allstate, right?
Yeah.
Given that everything else is so close.
And
Right.
maybe it's something like this where, and this is what we often see, is you present kind of the option. You say, hey, one's a term with LTC, one's universal life, one's whole life. They start to pick based on which concept appeals to the most. Do they
And
want more
I
of the guarantees? Do they want more of that term concept, which is really popular? I think your client is going to tell you when you present it what their preference is. And whenever they give you that signal, as we know, you probably want to go with what the client wants, and give it to
and
them.
and this is not a knock on any carrier, but I would just say the service we get from Allstate and the communication we get from them, not only from a wholesaler standpoint, but from an implementation manager standpoint, we have an existing relationship there that we really, really appreciate as well. Um, that's part of why I lean Allstate. But I would say if you're able to secure the employer funding and want to show an affordable option next to it, I would actually look Chubb because being able to take care of that 71 to 80 group at least a little bit is no joke, given what we looked over with the demographics. And again, affordable but high value plan. There's some things that aren't as competitive, like the 50% restoration up to 50,000, but I think those things um, kind of pale in comparison to a price palatable product that's kind of easy to understand.
Hey, Mark and Jason and Brian, I had written to Andy at Chubb and asked him the question, Brian, that you did. And he said, hey, Wendy, I don't believe it automatically drops. I'll confirm for you today. So that's what I know.
That's how you know you asked a really good question. It's going up like
Yeah.
several rungs
Great
of the
question.
ladder.
He didn't even know right away. He'll get
Good.
back to me and I'll let you know, Jason, to pass it on.
So as the one to kind of give a definitive answer on what two carriers I'd bring, those are my two answers and my reasoning as to why. But I think beyond being a good learning experience group, Brian, it's a really just interesting group to look at from the demographics. What do we look out for in a census? Obviously, being able to get a proposal from all four carriers means it's something where they desire the business. And I think if it's going to end up in all voluntary, we may probably favor Allstate over Chubb, but if we're able to get the employer funding, I think it's kind of a neck and neck race. There's things to like about both.
So, and I agree. That's kind of where we were when we talked the last time. Obviously Chubb is a company that they're super familiar with because I know that the partners and all the, insurance and people I refer them to, whatever, for their auto and home, Chubb is a huge, for them as well. So they obviously like the company. My other question at the end of the day is, we're going to get access to everybody through Chubb, I think it is, the 319. And otherwise we're going to get 306, which I think out of the extra couple people we're leaving off, are we really missing anybody? Probably not. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't, think that those are going to be the people we need to worry about, but is that going to be something that they really appreciate that we get it from more people? So
Yeah, I think
that's, so,
Allstate actually gave us 319 on the proposal as well.
oh, they did,
But
okay. All right, so,
yeah,
I mean,
Trustmark, we had a significant. The reason I didn't really go through Trustmark as much is not really an employer funding angle that's palatable there, but also I think we had a significant amount of employees not included in the eligible count. So,
okay,
um,
that's
so
fine.
the, I would say those are the two I would bring side by side. I would bring in that employer funded summary that we went over and just start by kind of showing at a level how affordable it can be to cover a large amount of highly affected employees, but also employees who could really use that foot in the door sort of funding for less than 2 grand a month.
Okay. Well, I will probably pop in and just talk to them a little bit before I come back to them with any formal proposal. I'll just chat with them really quickly, just to kind of throw that on or off the table. Because if it's off the table, I don't even want to waste time putting together, a couple different scenarios. So, and if anybody listening has any ideas or suggestions or something that's worked or doesn't work in these situations, I'm all ears. So I've been doing it a long time, and I definitely it's nice to hear other people's opinions as well. And I have plenty of them of my own, but I want to hear other people's also.
Yeah, yeah. If you've got
So,
anything
you
to
know,
share or to ask about the case or something that jumped out at you particularly, feel free to speak up. Because Brian would like to hear from you and just want to shout out Brian's want to share this with everybody as a learning experience because I know for many of you, if you don't have a group opportunity, it's hard to see things up close and personal like this. So it's like a chicken or egg scenario. I need an opportunity before I can see this, right? But I need to see this before I know how to navigate an opportunity, right? So Brian's done us a big service here by being vulnerable enough to allow us to present this case.
okay. Happy to help anyone out. So we're all in it together. So one person can't do it all. So
Right.
appreciate the time that you guys
Yeah,
spend with us.
I'd like to piggyback on that, and I think that thank you, Brian, for allowing us to sort of workshop this opportunity because I think that this community, like you said, we can help each other out, and when we run into challenges, um, I would encourage anyone to bring a case to the group. And like Jason said, you don't have to reveal, the company or anything, but just bring it to the group and let's see if we can't figure it out. And then I also think, Jason, we should probably do like the part two of this, which would be sort of a case study on the actual implementation and what that looks like, because that's another sort of intriguing process. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I can start to put some feelers out for folks who are kind of in an active case so we can,
Mm.
talk through what questions normally come up, right? 'Cause I think you and I and Mark and really everyone involved in those learn something new every single day from an implementation call. Even if it's just what do employers want? What do employers need to understand about these plans that as agents we don't? So I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I'll mention one thing too, kind of as a teaser a little bit, but to piggyback off of Gretchen, what you said is if you are interested in getting a group product for yourself and for your agency, we are working on an offer, likely to have the 5% compound with Allstate, where you can get access to that program through Buddy. So let us know if you're interested in that and exploring that, getting that plan for yourself, for your employees, for your agents, their employees, things of that nature. And that's a great way to experience it for the first time too, right? Start looking at it for yourself and you're going to learn how not only the product works, but when you do the enrollment, you'll learn the enrollment process that way too.
Yeah, that's actually like one of a kind to be able to experience it as potentially consumer and employer and pseudo implementer right? There's a lot of different angles of experience you can get from something like that, and there'll be more details to share on that soon, but that's something we're really, really excited about, to say the least. Um, well, Brian, thank you very much again for kind of on short notice, just kind of bringing this into us and kind of having the courage to go over this kind of live with us. And we encourage anybody else who has a similar case to do the same. We can share as much or as little about the case as you'd like, but we're happy to kind of help you with homework while we're in study hall. And anything you want to leave folks with, Brian, before we wrap it?
No, just, you gotta make sure that the employer is on board with it and they're willing to support it. And that's part of what I will not do is I will not beg somebody to do it until they're, blue in the face, and just make sure you got the commitment because otherwise it's not going to work, as we all know.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
I said it better myself.
Yep.
probably have.
Well, that's all she wrote. Again, thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you again to Brian and everybody for their help. And we will talk to you this time next week. I'm planning a block of carriers to talk about their ancillary products too. So that'll be some really good eye-opening content for you all as well. So take care, be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good
Thanks.
one.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.